So in this segment, we're going to be talking about Napier barracks housing. This annoys me from the BBC here. This right here, and we'll talk about that. But basically, asylum seekers being housed in Napier barracks. It's been found unlawful because it's unsafe. You can't keep people here because the place is unsafe, and it was a massive COVID risk, and it still is. So the Home Office decision to house cross-channel migrants, asylum seekers, because the thing is, right, first they use the term migrants here, and then they use the term asylum seekers, because it was the asylum seekers that brought the case. So BBC should be using the phrase asylum seekers here, because if not, they should be using the term migrants throughout then, if that's what they are. But they are asylum seekers. Come on, BBC. Embarrassing. So the Home Office decision to house cross-channel asylum seekers in a squalid barracks in Folkestone was unlawful, the High Court has ruled. And I've seen some people say that, well, oh, my son stayed here and, he was fine, he didn't complain. Like, you let your son stay in unsafe conditions. Like, I don't care if he was in the army. Like, no, like, we should treat soldiers better in this country. This barracks isn't fit for human residents. Like, come on now. Be serious, fool. So 6 asylum seekers brought the case, claiming Napier barracks was unsafe and dormitory use caused a COVID-19 outbreak earlier this year. So that's great. Not only are we housing people in unsafe places, we're causing COVID outbreaks in these areas. Phenomenal stuff, Priti Patel. The ruling could see a damages claim against Priti Patel, but we don't actually know the specifics if that will happen. And obviously it will be the taxpayer once again paying out for that, which I'm not saying, I blame these guys for seeking damages. I'm just saying because of Priti Patel's stupidity, it's going to cost the taxpayer again. The judgment could lead to further cases from any other men held at the camp who can bring similar evidence to court, and I reckon that's going to happen because it's going to be a slam dunk case. Mr. Justice Linden's judgment, what a name, looked in detail at a fire that broke out at the site in January when nearly 200 people contracted coronavirus during an outbreak at the camp. Like, that's horrible that you're housing people in conditions where they could easily catch COVID, especially because we could have had purpose-built facilities for asylum seekers, right? Or you could have housed them in a hotel. Yes, it's going to be very expensive to do that, but the fact is we haven't built the facilities in order to help these people process their claims as quickly as possible. And if they are allowed if they are found to be asylum seekers, let them stay in the country, or you deport them. If they're not, if their asylum claims are rejected, you can deport them. That's the usual method. Also, the fact that we can't send them back to France or wherever safe country they've come from, because we're not a member of the EU anymore, and we don't get access to the I think it's called the Dublin Agreement or something like that. So well done, Priti Patel. Another big win for you. The judge said, I do not accept that the accommodation there ensured a standard of living which was adequate for health of the claimants, which is no surprise given that there was a massive COVID outbreak there. Insofar as the defendant considered that the accommodation was adequate for their needs, that view was irrational. So the judge saying that, the idea that you thought this was, adequate accommodation is irrational, that thought. Shocker. So we've got some analysis here from Dominic Cascarani. I butchered his name. One of the crucial questions about Napier is why it was allowed to open in the way it did, given Public Health England had warned the Home Office the dorms would not be suitable. So this is where I think, people at the Home Office should be personally liable for this, because they were warned by Public Health England that this place was not safe. So whoever made the decision to house these people here should get fired. They should get fired, and they should face financial penalties for this, because not only did you put people in unsafe conditions which caused the COVID outbreak, you also made the taxpayer liable. You should be fired over this, because it was your incompetence that allowed people to stay in this place at Napier Barracks, despite the fact that you were warned by Public Health England not to let people stay there because it was too dangerous. It's just ridiculous. During the High Court hearing in April, there was no witness statement from PHE or Clear Springs, the Home Office contractor running the site. Gee, I wonder why. I wonder why Public Health England and Clear Springs didn't turn out. Do you know why? Because they wouldn't be able to lie in a court of law, and if they did, they would face perjury charges, but they didn't, because their evidence would be far more damning to the Home Office. The Home Office Clear Springs, the Home Office contractor, about how a plan was developed to manage COVID-19 risks. They probably didn't have one. That's why. Because they caused a massive COVID outbreak. They might say that, oh yeah, we had a plan and it was going to work, but, unless the plan was herd immunity, they didn't have one. The judge found civil servants appreciated the risks existed, but it's not clear how they took on board the significant problem Public Health England warned of, given they also need to get the best value for money out of the site. Well, they didn't get the best value for money, did they? Because the place wasn't COVID safe and you got sued for it. You didn't get the best value for money, did you? The bottom line said the judge was. The bottom line said the judge was the arrangements were contrary to Public Health England's advice and did not even implement measures which the Home Secretary herself apparently regarded as desirable and feasible. So there's a couple of different takeaways we can have here. One is that the Home Secretary said, "Look, I want you to make these changes to Clear Springs, and if you don't, then stuff, bro." Or she said, "I want you to make these changes, and you should do it." And Clear Springs didn't actually make the changes. Those are the two possibilities there. And if that's the case, why should Clear Springs should not have any more government contracts then? Because they have decided, if it's the case that the Home Office, the Home Secretary Priti Patel herself had told them fix up, or else fix up, because we need this place to be habitable at least. And Clear Springs like, don't worry, we've got this, and then they didn't do anything. Then they shouldn't get government contracts because they've been proven to be incompetent. But I reckon it's the first one, but it's speculation. Mr. Justice Linden also criticised the detention-like setting for the men. He said they were supposed to be living voluntarily, pending a determination of their applications for asylum. So they were meant to be allowed to leave the building if they wanted to, but they couldn't. When this is considered a decision that accommodation in a detention-like setting, a site enclosed by a perimeter fence topped with barbed wire, access to which is through padlock gates guarded by uniformed security personnel, probably costing a premium, will be adequate for their needs, begins to look questionable. And, they were kept in prison-like conditions by the looks of things. Barbed wire, high walls, guards, padlocks. Sounds very prison-like to me. Following the ruling, campaigners including human rights group Liberty Refugee Action and the Joint Council of the Welfare of Immigrants called for the immediate closure of the site. Liberty lawyer Lara Ten-Catton said the government's only response can be to close it down immediately. And I think it should be closed down, and it should be just renovated, completely renovated. Because you can't house asylum seekers here. You can't house soldiers here. You can't house anyone here. That's the point. This isn't even fit to be a prison by the sounds of things. So just renovate the entire place, or just knock it down at that point. So replace it with decent housing or something. Yvette Cooper, the Home Affairs Select Committee chairwoman, who does great work on the committee, constantly causing Priti Patel problems, said Ms. Patel and the Permanent Secretary told the committee in February the Home Office was working in line with public health guidance. So it sounds like she lied to the committee then. Sounds like she lied to the committee, and if that's the case, surely there should be some sort of penalty for that, but there never is. She said clearly they were not. We have called on them both to come back before the committee at the earliest opportunity to explain the decisions they made and also contradictions with the information they previously gave us in light of today's court ruling. So they should have to come back and they should have to give evidence. But the thing is, if it's the case they lied in the first place, what's the penalty for that? Absolutely nothing. And they'll continue to lie because there are no penalties. The Speaker won't hold them accountable. The committees can barely hold them accountable. No one can, apart from the electorate. But, the electorate's full of frauds. Men living at the barracks told the BBC their conditions were inhumane. One man speaking through the fence at the site said there was no hot water or electricity and one shower for 100 people. I mean, people say that, why don't they just go back to where they came from, blah, blah, blah. We don't know where these people came from. Some of these people would have escaped extreme poverty. Some of them would have escaped, war zones, etc. So, I don't want to hear any of that kind of rubbish in the comments. The simple fact is, we're a developed country. We can house asylum seekers. So we should be able to give people the minimum, which is hot water and electricity, and their asylum claims should be processed as quickly as possible, so that if they do have legitimate claims, they should be able to get the help they need in this country. And if they don't, then you can deport them. I have no problem with that if they don't have legitimate asylum claims. But at the same time, by causing having a lack of judges for asylum seekers, you create more problems in that respect. It's just so stupid. Lawyers from Dayton Pierce Glynn (DPG) had claimed the site, which said still housed more than 65 people, had breached the migrants' human rights. And the thing is, right, 265 people are living in a place where the courts have said the place was unsafe, inadequate. Why are people still there? If it's the case the court said you can't keep doing this. This place has to change. Why are people still living there? I don't understand. Surely the courts should have put in an order to have this place closed. I don't get it. The firm said emptying the barracks in early April 2021, and amid ongoing concerns for public health officials said the site could not be made COVID secure, the Home Secretary began refilling the site. So we already knew April 2021, that was a couple months ago. They couldn't fix the problems within the site. They couldn't make it COVID secure. I doubt they could have put in, hot water and electricity. And then you decided to fill up the place again. Is that because we don't have the adequate facilities for asylum seekers? Or is it because Priti Patel genuinely doesn't care about asylum seekers? Which one is it, guys? In April, the court heard public health experts had repeatedly raised concerns about the use of the site during the pandemic, while an independent report found seven suicide attempts and 7 incidents of serious self-harm. So it's gotten that bad that people who have had made dangerous journeys here from whichever countries they're from, going across the English Channel to get here from France, have done suicide attempts, self-harm, because they're not getting the help that they need. It's shocking that a country treats people like this, but then again, we treat people in this country horribly as well, so should it be surprised that we treat people that are extremely vulnerable in society badly? So, failing at the barracks include overcrowding, lack of ventilation, run-down buildings, use of communal dormitories during a pandemic, significant fire risk, filthy facilities, decrepit isolation block, not fit for habitation. These things, you can fix. You can fix overcrowding by having more facilities. So then you don't need overcrowding. Lack of ventilation is a bit more of a difficult one, but that's something you can fix. Run-down buildings, that's a harder fix. That's where you put people in the right place first time round. Use of communal dormitories during the pandemic, that's stupid. That's so dumb. Significant fire risk, that's terrifying, because if this place goes alight, you're talking potentially hundreds dead. That's fixable. Filthy facilities, again, fixable. Decrepit isolation block, not fit for habitation. I don't know how bad the rot is there, but if this is the case, then people shouldn't be living there. No one should be there, even asylum seekers. The ones that British people clearly do not care about for the most part. They should not be housed here. Tom Hickman QC, representing 4 claimants, previously told the court that the site was squalid, ill-equipped, lacking in personal privacy and unsafe. Lisa Gioventi QC, representing the Home Office, said clinically vulnerable people had been sifted out. Well, are you talking about people that are extremely vulnerable to COVID? If that's the case, fine, but you clearly haven't done a great job overall then, have you? You've done one minor thing that was good. Well done. Congratulations. Round of applause for Priti Patel. She said Miss Patel had decided the barracks could be used safely by introducing safeguards. Well, clearly those safeguards were either not good enough or they weren't implemented. And if that's the case, both are still failings of Priti Patel. Shocking. Embarrassing stuff here. The judge declined to rule the barracks could never be used to home asylum seekers, but called for substantial improvements. I think the judge is basically gambling that the Home Office will make improvements, because I think if they don't, I think the judge will call for its closure, because this place is not safe and it requires a lot of work. The Home Office said the 6 men have yet to agree on damages, so we don't know if how much they'll be. But I've read a separate article on this kind of similar thing where some of these people that have taken the Home Office to court are being blacklisted from certain facilities because they've decided to sue the government, which they're entitled to do. They're entitled to sue the government. A Home Office spokesperson said, during the height of the pandemic, to ensure asylum seekers were not left destitute, additional accommodation was required at extremely short notice. That's true, but at the same time, we do need to build purpose-built facilities for asylum seekers. We have to do that, especially when we're one of the countries that are funding weapons, giving weapons to people who are carrying out atrocities and forcing people to leave their homes. The bare minimum we should be doing is building purpose-built asylum seeker facilities in order to help push their claims, very quickly to the point where we know that, look, these people are legitimate asylum seekers. These are the steps we can use to help them, change their lives. And if they're not, then deport them. It's fine. But the fact is the UK is doing neither of those things, and that's one of the things causing these sorts of issues, not to mention our blatant disregard for asylum seekers. Such accommodation provided asylum seekers a safe and secure place to stay. I mean, it wasn't safe or secure, was it? Why are you lying for? Throughout this period, our accommodation providers and subcontractors have made improvements to the site and continue to do so. Clearly, it's not enough, and this place should, this is a place where soldiers lived. If we actually care about veterans, surely this place should never have been allowed to go into disrepair in the first place. And this is the most annoying statement in this whole thing. The spokesperson said it is disappointing that this judgment was reached on the basis of the site prior to significant improvement works which have taken place in difficult circumstances. First of all, what's the improvement works that you have done? Because we've already covered that you haven't actually made that many improvements and that the place is still full. Loads of people live there. And what a stupid argument, to say that, judge, I may have robbed a bank, but you haven't taken into account how good a person I am right now. That's not going to fly with a judge. It hasn't flown with a judge. They didn't buy your argument, did they, Pretty Patel? It's shocking stuff here. It's embarrassing how this country treats asylum seekers. I mean, look at this place. And this, you could open up a broader conversation about how the UK treats certain people in general, because we've already covered stories about people living in squalid accommodation in the rented sector anyways. It shows you that the government really don't care about people in general, poorer people, more vulnerable people in society, because certain checks, they are allowing people, British citizens, asylum seekers, migrants, whatever, to live in squalid conditions where there's things like black mould in the places that they live. And the fact is, the government still fail to do anything about these things because it's by design, it's part of their ideology. But we're going to cover this article soon, which is talking about blacklisting. So anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.